I'd always believed anniversaries were sacred, a celebration of promises and memories, a chance to honor everything we built together. Every year, I'd planned something special for Claire, hoping those small gestures would keep the flame alive. But this year, something felt off. I couldn't ignore the flicker of her phone screen in the dark, or the hushed tone of her voice when she thought I was asleep. Every time she turned away to take a call, it felt like a crack in the life we'd promised to share. Before, I might have shrugged it off as harmless, but now, that quiet doubt was eating away at me. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things, that maybe I was just being paranoid, that marriage wasn't supposed to be perfect, but the way Tom wouldn't meet my eyes anymore. That said everything. Tom, who'd once been the first to raise a glass at our parties, now slipped out of rooms like the walls were closing in on him. I felt the weight of it every day, like a quiet storm brewing in my gut. I still smiled for Claire, for Tom, for everyone who thought we were the perfect couple. But deep down, I knew I couldn't ignore that question anymore. What if the perfect lie was all we had left? As the days blurred together, I stopped seeing our anniversary as a celebration. It felt more like a chance, a moment to peel back the pretty facade and see what was really there. The truth wouldn't stay buried forever, that much I knew. But I didn't want to come at her with half-baked suspicions or desperate accusations. I wanted the truth to speak for itself, undeniable and loud. I decided I didn't need accusations. I needed proof. Every morning, I woke up next to her, and the doubts gnawed at me like termites in the walls. She'd smile and kiss my cheek, but her eyes never quite met mine. I started to memorize the way she spoke to me, every half-hearted "I love you," every nervous glance that lingered a second too long. I became obsessed with the tiny details, the little cracks in her armor that she thought I wouldn't notice. I didn't want to see it, but I couldn't look away. At night, I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathing, wondering if she was dreaming of me or of him. My mind played back every moment, every soft laugh she shared with Tom, every time he touched her shoulder a little too casually. I felt like I was drowning in my own thoughts, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had to be smart. I had to be patient. I couldn't let my anger show, not yet. It was like living in a play where everyone else knew their lines but me. They played their part so well, acting out our happy marriage for anyone who might be watching. And me? I played along too, because I needed them to believe I was still blind. I didn't let on that I was already planning my next move, because this anniversary wasn't going to be just another performance. It was going to be the day the truth finally took the stage. I started to see the cracks in our life together as something more than just flaws. They were clues. Clues that pointed to a betrayal I could almost taste. It was in the way Tom's laughter seemed forced, how his eyes darted around the room whenever I walked in. And it was in the way Claire's fingers would tighten around her phone, her smile never reaching her eyes. I couldn't ignore it anymore, no matter how much I wanted to. I had to find out the truth, even if it meant tearing everything apart. I knew I had to be careful. One wrong move and they'd close ranks, shut me out of their little secret. So I played the devoted husband, the loving friend. I laughed at Tom's jokes, even though they tasted like poison in my mouth. I kissed Claire goodnight, even as my heart twisted with every lie she told. I felt like I was standing on a knife's edge. Every breath I took a gamble, but I couldn't back down. Not now. I decided then that I didn't need to confront them with angry words or desperate pleas. I didn't need to beg for the truth. I'd let it reveal itself. The anniversary was coming, and with it, my chance to pull back the curtain and show the world what lay behind those perfect smiles. I didn't need accusations. I needed proof. I'd always thought of myself as a patient man, but the weight of what I suspected was almost too much to bear. Still, I forced myself to stay calm, to let the anger settle beneath my skin like a slow-burning fire. I knew I couldn't rush this. If I wanted the truth, I had to let it come to me, piece by piece. So I started planning, quietly, carefully. I bought small cameras, hidden so well no one would ever guess. I started recording phone calls, listening for those small cracks in their perfect story. At first, I felt like a stranger in my own life, watching from the shadows, collecting every whispered word. I'd sit alone in the glow of my computer screen, heart pounding as I rewound the recordings over and over. I felt like a man possessed, but I couldn't stop. Every night, I added another piece to the puzzle, another scrap of truth to the pile. And with every new recording, the picture grew clearer. The lies, the stolen moments. It was all there, like poison seeping into the cracks of our home. It was strange how normal everything still looked from the outside. In the mornings, we'd share coffee at the kitchen table, and she'd smile at me as if nothing had changed. But I knew better. I watched her carefully, memorizing every detail. The way her fingers trembled when she thought I wasn't looking. The way Tom's name always made her pause, just for a second. My anger was still there, simmering. But I kept it hidden, locked behind the same smile she thought she could trust. Every day felt like I was walking a tightrope, balancing between the life we pretended to have and the truth I was slowly uncovering. I'd smile and nod when she talked about plans for the anniversary, pretending to be the loving husband she thought she knew. But inside, I was calculating, measuring every word, every glance, every moment when her eyes darted to her phone. I kept telling myself that I needed more, that one slip wasn't enough to shatter the facade. So I waited and I watched. Some nights, the recordings would keep me awake. I'd lie there, headphones pressed tight, listening to her laughter, her sighs, her promises to Tom. It felt like I was peeling back the skin of my own life, exposing the raw, ugly truth underneath. There were moments when I wanted to wake her up, to shake her and demand an explanation. But I didn't. I held it in, even when it felt like it was going to tear me apart. I realized then that this wasn't just about catching her. It was about finally seeing things for what they really were. No more pretending. No more hoping that I was wrong. The recordings were my armor, the thing that kept me steady when everything else felt like quicksand. I could feel the truth hardening inside me, a cold certainty that there was no going back. And still, I kept my face calm and my voice steady, because if she thought I was blind, she would soon see just how clearly I could see. I watched her move around our home like nothing was wrong, and I wondered how many lies a person could tell themselves before they started to believe them. She'd brush past me with a smile, drop a kiss on my cheek, and I'd wonder if she felt even a flicker of guilt. Or maybe she was just as good at pretending as I'd become. Either way, I kept my distance. I let her have her secrets, all the while gathering the evidence I needed. The more I listened to those recordings, the more I felt like I was listening to ghosts, echoes of the life I thought we had. Her laughter with Tom wasn't the same as the laughter she shared with me. It was softer, almost tender, and it broke something inside me that I hadn't even realized was still whole. But instead of rage, I felt a kind of cold resolve settle in. I wouldn't let her lies define me. I wouldn't let them steal what was left of my dignity. So I kept recording. Every night, every word, every secret she thought was safe. I told myself that this wasn't about revenge. It was about the truth that would finally set me free. Because if she thought she could keep me in the dark, she was about to learn just how bright the light could be. The days leading up to our anniversary felt like a performance I'd been rehearsing for years. I smiled at her in the mornings, kissed her goodnight in the evenings, and played the part of the devoted husband so well I almost believed it myself. But inside, my mind was racing. I was planning every detail, the guest list, the music, the cake. Even Tom was invited, of course. It had to look perfect. Everything had to look exactly the way she wanted it to. Because that night wasn't just about celebration. It was about revelation. I watched her as she moved around the house, setting out candles and planting the flowers. She looked so sure of herself, so confident that she could keep her secret hidden behind a pretty smile. And every time I caught her glancing at Tom's name on her phone, it only steeled my resolve. This wasn't going to be another anniversary where we clinked glasses and told ourselves everything was fine. This was going to be the night she'd never forget. I practiced my own smile in the mirror, making sure it reached my eyes. I needed her to believe that I was still blind, still wrapped up in the fantasy she'd built for us. Because if she thought she could keep me in the dark forever, she was about to learn how quickly everything can change. I wasn't just planning a party. I was planning the moment she'd realize the truth was bigger than both of us. The house was buzzing with anticipation, everyone caught up in the excitement of another milestone. Friends and family filled the rooms, voices rising in laughter and clinking glasses. It felt like we were living in a photograph, everything perfectly arranged, everyone smiling on cue. But beneath the surface, I could feel the tension coiling tighter with every passing hour. I moved through the party, making small talk, shaking hands, and all the while, my eyes were on her. And on him. Tom tried to keep his distance, but I could see the way his eyes always found hers across the room. I watched them exchange glances that lasted just a second too long, and it made my skin crawl, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I raised my glass in a toast, my smile wide and warm, and I watched Claire's lips curve into that same practiced smile. She thought I was still playing along, that I was still the man who trusted her without question. I told myself I could wait just a little longer. Let them laugh. Let them dance and whisper in corners. Let them believe they'd gotten away with it. Because tonight wasn't just about their secret. It was about my strength, about showing them both that I wasn't the fool they thought I was. And as the music played and the guests celebrated, I felt that calm resolve settle in. I was ready. I moved through the party like a ghost, my thoughts miles away, even as I laughed at jokes and accepted hugs. It was almost surreal, how normal everything looked on the surface. The cake was beautiful, the music soft and sweet. Guests complimented us on how in love we still seemed. I thanked them politely, holding on to my secret like a lifeline, because I knew this was the last night I'd play the part they expected me to. Every glance she shared with Tom was like another cut, but I didn't flinch. I'd become so good at hiding it, the hurt, the anger, the cold certainty that there was no going back. I let them have their stolen glances, their whispered promises, because tonight, those small betrayals would be exposed for everyone to see. I didn't need to raise my voice or throw accusations. The truth would be enough. As the night stretched on, I felt the anticipation building inside me, a quiet hum beneath the laughter and music. I looked around at the people we loved, the friends and family who believed in us, in the life we'd built together. And I knew that in just a little while, everything would change, because I wasn't just hosting an anniversary party. I was about to reveal the final act of our carefully crafted lie. I felt the weight of every lie as I stood there, ready to bring it all into the light. The party was still in full swing, laughter echoing through the house, but in my chest, my heart was pounding out a different rhythm. I called for everyone's attention, raising my glass with a smile that felt too big, too bright. Claire's eyes lit up, expecting some sweet, sentimental toast. She didn't know this wasn't a toast. It was the end. I told them all how much this night meant to me, how anniversaries were about truth and love and seeing each other for who we really were. My voice sounded calm, steady, even though my hands were shaking. I saw Claire's smile flicker, just for a moment, and I knew she could feel it. The storm I'd kept hidden was about to break. I looked at her and let that silence stretch, making her wonder what I was about to say. Then I told them there was one last surprise, a special video I'd put together to celebrate our love. I watched her eyes widen, her lips part in a small gasp. And in that moment, I felt a strange sense of peace. I'd waited long enough. No more pretending, no more lies. Just the truth, loud and clear, for everyone to see. I pressed play, and the room fell silent. The screen flickered to life, and there it was. Tom's voice, soft and low, calling her name like it was a prayer. Claire's laughter, sweet and intimate, filled the air, echoing off the walls like a ghost I couldn't banish. My hands were steady now, my heart calm in a way I hadn't felt in weeks. Because there was no turning back from this moment, no more hiding from the truth. I watched her face as the seconds ticked by, the way her smile froze, the way her eyes went wide with horror. Tom looked like he wanted to disappear, his face pale and tight as the whispers turned into shocked gasps around us. But I didn't flinch. I stood there, silent and unyielding, letting the truth do what it was always meant to do, letting it cut through every lie we'd lived. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her, for them. But then I remembered the way they'd stolen those moments from me, how they'd turned our love into a lie, and any pity I might have felt turned to steel in my chest. Because this wasn't just about them anymore. It was about taking back the pieces of myself they thought they could keep. The room was so quiet now, you could have heard a pin drop. I looked around and saw the shock in everyone's eyes. Friends and family who had no idea that this night was always going to end like this. Claire's face had gone pale, her hands trembling as she reached for me, as if there was still a way to take it all back. But I didn't move. I didn't give her the comfort she was so used to, because tonight there would be no soft landings. I felt a kind of clarity then, sharper than any rage. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the one that made every careful step, every hidden camera, every sleepless night worth it. And in that moment, I wasn't just the man she'd betrayed. I was the man who finally saw her for who she really was, and I was done pretending otherwise. The video ended, but the silence stayed, heavy and suffocating. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The truth was there, hanging in the air like smoke. And as I turned away, I knew there was nothing left to say. The only thing louder than the recording was the sound of her world shattering. I didn't stay to see the fallout. As the whispers grew into a wave of stunned voices behind me, I turned and walked out, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders with every step. I didn't need to watch her try to explain it away. I didn't need to see Tom's shame or the confusion in the faces of people who thought they knew us. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't carrying their secrets anymore. I was done. I left the house behind me, the cold night air wrapping around me like a promise. My phone buzzed in my pocket, her name flashing on the screen over and over. I didn't answer. I let it ring until it stopped, the silence afterward feeling like a clean slate. The evidence I gathered was more than enough. There'd be no games, no second chances. Tomorrow, the divorce papers would be filed, and that chapter would be closed. As I walked away from the home we'd built, the home she'd turned into a house of lies, I felt the strangest sense of relief. I'd thought it would feel like defeat, like losing everything. But it didn't. It felt like freedom. Because no matter what came next, I knew I was finally done living in her shadow. And that was enough. I spent that night alone, but it didn't feel empty. It felt like the first breath after drowning. The air sharp and cold, but clean. I thought about everything I'd given to that marriage. Every piece of myself I'd handed over without question. And for the first time, I let myself admit just how much it had cost me. The late nights waiting for her to come home. The excuses I'd swallowed just to keep the peace. The way I'd convinced myself that love meant forgiveness. I saw it all for what it was now, a story I'd been telling myself to keep from falling apart. I made coffee in the morning, the kitchen quiet except for the drip of the pot. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the walls with a soft glow that felt almost hopeful. I sat at the table and watched the light spread across the floor, feeling more like myself with every passing second. I didn't know what the future looked like yet, but for once, I wasn't afraid of the uncertainty, because I knew whatever came next, it would be honest. And that was something worth holding on to. The divorce would be messy. I knew that much. But I was ready to let go of the life we'd built on half-truths and empty promises. Ready to stop wondering if I was enough. In a way, it felt like I was finally waking up from a long, restless sleep. And as I stood there, coffee in hand and the day just beginning, I realized that freedom didn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes it came in the quiet certainty that you were done being lied to. I spent the day packing up the last pieces of my life with her, the photographs that used to make me smile, the trinkets that had once felt like love. Each box felt like another step away from the man I'd been with her. I didn't keep much, just the things that mattered, the pieces of me that were truly mine. The rest I left behind, like the memories of the man she'd turned me into, the man who'd believed every lie, who'd trusted her without question. I didn't feel angry anymore, not even sad. It was like a storm had finally blown itself out, leaving behind a strange, quiet calm. I knew there would be hard days ahead, nights when the emptiness would feel bigger than the house I'd left behind. But I also knew I'd face them as a man who'd chosen himself for the first time in years. That was worth more than any vow we'd made or any promise she'd broken. As I stepped out into the bright afternoon, I took one last look over my shoulder. The house stood there, silent and still, a monument to everything we'd lost and everything I'd finally let go of. And in that final moment, I felt nothing but relief. On our anniversary, she got everything she deserved, and I got my freedom.